Strategic Planning Committee meeting of Monday, February 23rd is now come into session. We'd like to stand for invocation. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for all the good things that you've given us, the opportunity to live in this great parish, with all the fine people that live here. We'd like to ask you that you give us the wisdom to make good decisions on all of these tasks that we have before us, and that you also allow us to come home safely to our families. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Councilman Valentine and Kluat are out of town, and Councilman Johnson is working tonight. We have Council Chairman Bell filling in to make the quorum. Public comment period. Anyone that wishing to speak on an agenda item, please get a card from Ms. Cinnamon up here, and you're allowed to speak on any subject you wish here. All right, number 4, approval of minutes of strategic planning meeting of January 26, 2009.
Motion to approve minutes.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilman Bell. Any objections? So moved. Okay, we're going to move, due to timing constraints, we're going to move item number 13 to 4A and item number 12 to 4B, which we will go to right now. A review of DPW West Bank building sites. Mr. Martinez, Parish President.
We've been having $750,000 in the budget to build a new DPW building on the West Bank for a little over a year now, and we've narrowed the choices down to 3 sites. One being on LA1, and Mr. Radilla has pictures of each one that we're going to show you a little slide presentation. LA1, there's 5 acres there that's being donated by the Lemon and Tebow family. That's a possibility. Number 2 is the existing Public Works building, which is the old fairgrounds. We've also been negotiating with that foundation, and they are willing to sell that property at a discounted price, at no interest over 20 years. Haven't negotiated a price yet, but that's something that could possibly be worked out with West Ascension Recreation as far as capital improvements, and they possibly might want to join in that effort, and we could actually buy the property for the Public Works building where it exists now, and we could work with them on the recreation part. Option 3 is by the jail, Lemon Cutoff Road. We have 2.5 acres there that we want to look at. At the jail, we have sewer and water and security. At the fairgrounds, we have sewer and water, and a lot of all the infrastructure is there. And on Highway 1, it's just a raw piece of ground. So again, they'd have water there. I don't know if they have fire protection, but they'd have water there, and there's no sewer. So on that option, you would spend quite a bit of money probably on building infrastructure, where the other 2 sites have infrastructure in place. But again, I want to bring all 3 of these options out, and I'm going to ask Mr. Radilla to come up now and maybe show you the 3 sites. And basically what we need you to do, since it's a budgeted item, it's over $25,000. It needs to go to finance and then to the full council. So Mr. Radilla, I'd like to call on you.
Good evening, committee members, chairman, parish president. See if I can get this thing started. Oh, there we go. Okay. The first site I have up there is the one that parish president mentioned. This is on the road to the jail. You can see part of the jail in the background. No doubt we've got security located at that site. Also about 100 yards from here is also a fire station. And that's one view of that piece of property. Here's a center view of it. And back from the bridge, this is actually taken from that fire station's parking lot. This is a site on Highway 1. It's actually split. It's 5 acres, as the parish president said. It's 2.5 acres, which are kind of semi-wooded, and the other half, 2.5 acres, where you'd see the left, it actually splits the line. I lost one slide in here somewhere, but that's actually split. It's 2.5 acres to the left, 2.5 acres to the right. This is down Highway 1. One thing that the parish president did not mention, and I've also conferred with DPW Director Ronnie Fairchild on this. If we had to get our equipment out of here, much less on a normal day, it would be a pretty terrible situation. The traffic is just atrocious down there. It's Highway 1. It's a main evacuation route. During a storm, you can't cause a chock-a-block, bumper to bumper. But it is to the right. If we came back to Donaldsonville, we'd have to cross that highway just to get any of our equipment back to town to work on anything. This is our present building at the fairgrounds right now, the older building. That's our 3 choices. Anybody questions? If I want to back up and look at something, tell me. I just learned how to use this fancy thing.
Any question?
Yes.
Councilman Thompson.
The site that the Tebow's wants to donate over here on Highway 1, the survey and all the stuff that has to be done, do we have a price?
No, sir, we'd have to pay for that survey. We'd have to pay for that to be done.
So we don't know how much that would cost?
No, we do not, and it's actually 2 families. It's the Lemon family and the Tebow family. So split, did I do that? Split down the middle, what you see right there to the right, we'd have to pay to get both properties surveyed and that section cut out. That much I do know about it.
So do we have anything in writing guaranteeing the donation of this property?
Not that I'm aware of. Parish President?
I met with Mr. Lemon and Mr. Tebow, and they both said that they would donate the land. They had a couple of drainage projects that Mr. Lemon is waiting on that's still not complete, but I think I talked to Ronnie Fairchild, and both of those projects are in the works and will get done. So I don't think there's a problem with them donating the land. As I said, that's just an option, and I know Mr. Oliver Joseph had been working hard on this as far as obtaining this land, so that's an option that we do have now, and I don't think it'll be a problem obtaining it.
The piece by the jail, we already own that 2.5 acres.
That's correct.
So we need to look at and try to figure out which would be the best site for the evacuation and financial, because we don't want to spend all the money we got on paying for surveying and dividing property and attorney fees.
That's certainly a consideration when you have to go in and start from raw ground and put infrastructure in. It'll absorb quite a bit of that $750,000. What we need to do, I imagine, before we get to the finance committee meeting, is actually try to get some kind of price on each.
That's what I was going to ask. If you could take all 3 sites, put a timetable, because I know the one at the fairgrounds is pretty much contingent upon if the parish would decide to purchase that, then you could do something with that site. If you could put a realistic timetable on when we could move towards each site, for example, on Highway 1, we would have to have some type of parish planning and zoning meeting to acquire the sites, change ownership, and then we would have to do some surveys. So I'd like to see how long that would take, how much that would cost, and if we could do a markup on all 3 of them, and then we can do a fair comparison. So
we can have that ready, hopefully, if not by the finance committee, by the regular meeting.
okay, that would be our recommendation, is you to get a cost and time schedule on all 3 of them, and and that way we can see, you know, true costs and hidden costs, so that we can see what we have. I'd like to also find out the situation for his ingress and egress, ability to move about the parishes, you know, for all those 3 areas.
Mr. Rodillo will have that for you in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
He'll work
And
diligently on it. I can
with
assure you.
with that, we'll put this on the finance agenda in order to move forward there, next finance agenda.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Yes, what's the timeline on us building this building?
Do you have any idea?
I think an architect's been hired. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes,
And
sir.
he's just waiting on a piece of land so he can configure to actually do the drawings to fit with the piece of property that you have. So
There's one more slide up there that I just put up, if you guys can see it on your monitors.
Yes, sir.
That's a layout, I think Ronnie M. drew it up at DPW to where it would fit on that property on the jail road, Lemonville Cutoff Road. So at least you can see what the layout looks, what the parking. Again, this is not written in stone, but this building is 100 by 80 with a 70 by 80 back shop area and equipment storage area.
you have a cost on that, Joe?
And it
This
just
one
can be
can-
laid out anywhere, just
Be adapted to each.
set out on this so you have something to look at least.
How much interacting we have with the city of Downsonville, our workers on the west side, on a day-to-day basis?
Not very much that I'm aware of at all.
So it doesn't have to be in the city or in the area where it's...
Ronnie can answer that, but I don't see it. I'm there every day now, and I don't see it. Our crew works pretty steadily on most of the stuff out in the parish on their own.
Well, I mean, ideally, we would have liked to have kept it in a centrally located area within the city. It keeps another building occupied, and there's a lot of advantages to keeping it there. People are well satisfied with it being there. But quite frankly, the building itself is just not acceptable, and we do have to get something better so we can move on. And so this is where we are. We don't own that property, so we can't spend $750,000 locating a building there unless we would acquire that property. The biggest obstacle on that one is time frame. If we could work something out there, and I do know, I think Mr. Nizo, you're working with that somewhat with recreation from that standpoint, but that's two separate issues. So we don't want to try to keep that. We want to try to separate the DPW building from the recreation. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, a motion to.
Motion to move to finance.
Okay, motion by Mr. Thompson, Mr. Bell, second by Mr. Thompson, to move to finance with the recommendation to gather more information and present that at finance. Any opposition? So moved. Okay, number 12, Keep Louisiana Beautiful grant update. Ms. Martha Collins. I see school board member Mr. Gyro is here also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, President Martinez. We're here to just give you an update on the Keep Louisiana Beautiful grant. I have here tonight with me Harold Gyro, who is a member of the Keep Ascension Beautiful Committee, and Wendy Gonzalez. And what I'd like to do is turn that over to Mr. Gyro and let him give you a little brief history of what's going on with the Keep Ascension Beautiful, and then Dr. Brando will give you an overview of what we've accomplished.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here this evening. We appreciate it. Just want to give a little report on an update on the Keep Ascension Beautiful board. We had some focus groups set up to try and procure this grant, Keep Louisiana Beautiful, to help kind of enhance or improve upon some of the programs we've already had in place, and even do a better job of Keep Ascension Beautiful. We've had several meetings with the focus group, some good folks involved. Terrence and Ms. Martha got some folks together that are doing a real good job. We actually had a little problem with this storm kind of in between focus sessions, but we're able still to pull it together. And what I'd like to do is just turn it over to the doctor here to let him give you an update on where we're at.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Jarrow, council members. The focus group we had was very active. We had 25 different members of our community involved, and they did an excellent job really applying themselves to the task of coming up with ways to move the parish forward in terms of keeping Ascension beautiful. And they developed a mission statement, and following that they came up with 3 primary focus areas and developed objectives and action items in each of those focus areas. The 3 primary focus areas they developed were litter control and enforcement as the first, education and awareness as the second, and recycling and conservation as the third. And the real linchpin for this effort comes from the litter control and enforcement, because what the focus group is recommending for consideration is if we can reduce the amount of litter through appropriate enforcement of existing statutes, that we can get a cleaner Ascension. We can also develop some additional resources that we could use in the other 2 areas of education and awareness and recycling and conservation. Of course, the details are provided there and the report for you, but we encourage you guys to take a look at this. We'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have, and in the hopes that this would be presented to the full council for its review.
Right.
Motion to move.
Yeah, where do we go from here?
As far what we'd like to do is to present it to the full council, because some of the actions that will be taken on by the Keep Ascension Beautiful will entail your support and actually possibly starting the litter court back again.
Okay.
So there are some issues that the full council has to adopt the action plan and the outcomes from the group, and then we will meet or the committee will meet and then take on some of the action plans to develop out and then report back to you on the progress.
Okay, Martha, this is funded by the grant?
The focus group and everything so far has been funded through the Keep Louisiana Beautiful grant, and
Okay.
this was the final portion to complete the grant process, other than going to the full council and asking for adoption of what these efforts are. And then the Keep Ascension Beautiful committee is with Terrence Irvin, and he's wasn't able to be here tonight, but there's some programs that are already in that he's working with that kind of shadow this, but it brings it to another level, because there are some things that we could do with the support of the council. So the grant portion is complete. It's the next step is to go into these action plans with the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. I got a letter from a constituent, and I don't normally read letters, but this is kind of special here, so I decided I didn't have a way to contact them, so I decided I'm going to acknowledge the letter here today. It's from Cade DeSouge, a 3rd grader from Central Elementary, since we're talking about education and recycling. He lives on Roddy Road. Said, "Dear Mr. Kent Shakespeare, I'm Cade DeSouge, and I'm writing to you as a school project. This is why you should recycle. It's good for the earth, and we don't have to pollute the air. We're running out of spaces, and we should continue to recycle. You should go to every street and put a letter in their mailbox saying to get a recycling box, and recycling company will come down your street too. Thank you for spending the time to read this letter." And so we see that recycling is reaching out in our education and everything, so the young people, and so it is something that we're having. So I want to thank Cade and the rest of the 3rd graders in Miss News class for putting something out there. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doctor, I want to thank you and your committee for your efforts. Anything we can do to help you to keep the process moving, we'll do all we can. I would like to invite all my fellow councilmen to attend the school, I think Cade's little school, Wednesday. President Martinez will be giving a talk to the 3rd graders on recycling. And we all got these same letters, and our president will be in the schools, and we'll be there with him. So we thank all of y'all for your work. Thank you, sir.
And
Okay.
yes.
I want to thank him also. I got a mailbox full of those letters. So, and that's why we read them, and now we're going to go and visit with the class Wednesday morning at 9:30.
Okay.
And we've this is about the second or third school we've gone to and discussed recycling and litter. And I want to thank all of you for a great job in working on the committee. I know Harold's out there with the recycling truck every time it's there, and y'all have done a wonderful job, and we appreciate the volunteerism in Ascension Parish. Thank y'all.
And we want to let everybody know that our CAO Cedric Grant is working on a comprehensive program to try to find out ways to fund it without having the people of the parish really too far out of pocket. And so we're trying to do things the right way and try to go forward in a timely manner. And so among the many other things they're doing, he is working on that as we speak. And so that's something that down the line it's going to take a lot of planning to do it the right way, but we're going to try to do a first-class comprehensive program of litter and recycling.
That's why the most important part was, rather than take on and just do a project, the importance of doing a strategic plan and actually coming up with some goals and objectives and ways to achieve long-term will fit in with Mr. Grant's proposal. This will feed into it, and you'll have a committee already working towards the same goals.
And we sure do appreciate it.
So it's
With
been
that,
a big
we need a
success.
motion.
I'll
to
make
move.
that motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Pell, second by Mr. Thompson, to move this forward to the full council and
For presentation.
for presentation and support.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we go to number 5, resolution of variance to noise ordinance for industrial plant service. We have one speaker card, Mr. Wesley Babin. Wesley, yeah. Come on up, Joe. Come. Okay, Wesley.
Good evening, Councilman, Parish President. My name is Wesley Babin. I represent American Industrial Plant Services of Santa Monica, Louisiana. We're trying to make application to get a noise ordinance variance. I've written a letter to Councilman Kluwat. We presented part of this stuff at the last Thursday's council meeting, and we were referred to the strategic planning meeting. At that meeting last week, I presented some information, and I think you guys have a package of that now. I won't go through the stuff that I went through last week, but attached to what I sent last week is a noise control plan and schedule. As trying to be a good constituent and a good citizen of the community, the corporate community as well, American Industrial is proposing to implement some noise controls to help alleviate some of the problems and issues that we have with the community, not just during the off hours, but all through the day as well. In that noise control plan, we're changing some of the tasks, the way that we do them, especially at night and on the off hours, so that we can minimize the noise that is emitted from our facility. And on the weekends as well, we try to do particular tasks that do not create as much noise. So along with that, we're going to try to implement some barrier to keep the sound controlled to our property. First of all, we're proposing to put up a 10-foot fence along the western property boundary, which seems to be the area of most concern. At this time, the parish is in the process of doing some drainage project there, so I have to wait until we get that completed before I can put that barrier fence up along that boundary. Also today, I revised this plan to also include a couple of other items that may help, one of which is to possibly put an enclosure around our air compressor in that area of the yard to minimize the noise from that particular piece of equipment. We also talked a little bit about putting some insulation in our building to help keep the sound down and contained within inside of our building. In this variance, I'm asking for, I gave a schedule in this plan. Our normal hours are from 7 to 5:30 during the work days, and then our current night hours we're working right now are 6 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. Commencing on or about the 9th of March, I'll be receiving a large shipment of some materials that are required for an important project that has to be finished and completed and delivered by the end of March. So I will definitely be working off hours, which nights and weekends, including Sunday, during those times. And I'll probably change our shifts from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So it'll be basically a 24-hour period. And in our plan, I'm saying that this work will be complete by March 31st. Again, during this time, I will, as an officer of the company, try to be sure that our procedural implementations are in place and followed by our employees during the nights and weekends.
Ms. Wesley, thank you very much. We'll have some questions for you soon.
Okay.
I want everyone to have a chance to speak. Next speaker is Mr. Joe Nasser. Thanks for coming, Joe.
Thank y'all. Last week I watched the meeting and Mr. Wesley Babin asked for this variance. Well, I moved here in 1981, 82 from Convent. I moved back in that area because it was quiet, it was a dead-end road. There was no shop there. There was no fabrication shop there. It was quiet and it was peaceful. Of course, there was no ordinance at that time zoning. Mr. Jimmy Babin, his father, built a shop. Well, adjacent to me, we still had 1 acre that was a buffer between myself and the shop. Well, the lady that was living there passed away, and her husband had to sell the property. Well, we were young people. I couldn't afford to buy it, and even the guy's brother lived across the street, Mr. Lee Young. He's passed away too now. He couldn't afford to buy it. So Mr. Jimmy bought it. The shop came up almost overnight. 1 acre shop right against my property line, which is about 100 feet from my, my bedroom window. The noise is continuous and has been for 20 years. Continuous, continuous. Mr. They've sandblasted there. Also, Mr. Babin failed to, I forgot to mention that last week when he was talking about his employees, how many he had and so forth. The sandblasting shop is right on my property line, maybe 10 feet. You know, it's on his property, and I give him that. The noise is terrible. Day and night, the compressor runs sometimes 24 hours a day. Sometimes they forget it running. Sometimes it's left on, I guess intentionally, 7 days a week. You can't sleep. Well, you can sleep, but you wake up during the night and you hear all this noise, banging and stuff. Some years ago, Mr. Babin did a lot of work for the SS Louisiana, I think, if I'm correct. They built some great big stainless steel tanks or whatever they were. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with mouths and welding and everything. You could hear the noise from Gold Place, not Gold Place Road, from DeLon's grocery store on 431. People asked us, how did we live there? We made some recordings of it, we still have them and stuff, but nothing really got done. I believe Mr. Martinez, I called him one night. You remember that, don't you? 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. Came out there in the freezing cold. He was a councilman at the time. He drew up a noise ordinance and all, and they tried. But the sheriff's department didn't have the meters. You'd call and one deputy would come out, we don't have a meter, it's at the other place, this and that. Well, here recently, the sheriff finally came out to my place. I called him, I said, Jeff, would you please come out and take a look at this? He did. And one thing led to another. Now, Mr. Babin, and Wesley, I like you a lot. I like you. I saw that boy come up. And he's got a business to run, I understand that. Now they want a variance to the noise ordinance. Now they want to build a fence. What type of fence? How's it going to look? Is it going to be something like they got on the, on the interstate highways, or something that'll really keep the sound out? Now, even if Wesley does that, and I'm not going to complain about everything you do, Wesley, the people across the street, Miss Young, if you funnel all that noise straight across the street, stop it from coming to the west, it's all going to go south and southwest to Mr. Dale Babin. It's terrible, and before I would, I'm going to cut this thing short. It's a nuisance. Noise is a nuisance, and until you live it, you don't know. Where Mr. Babin lives, I don't know. I know where his father lives. It's quiet down there except on Sundays with the boat rides and all, in the Virgin Canal. But we bought there because it was quiet. It's only 1 acre of land. We have a modest home. But it's our place, and we were there first. Before his noise, before all of this, to make a long story short, can you believe that? Make a long story short, it's noise, and all the people in my little area don't want to see this variance come. They don't. And we'll take it from there.
Thank you.
Really, I want to say one thing. You guys can do whatever you want to do. But I don't see how you all can, you're here to govern, I understand that. And that's what we want you to do, to the best of your ability. But how can you govern for some and take away the rights of the others? I don't know. I don't think you guys are going to do that.
Thank you, Joe.
I thank you.
Okay, just a little background. I spoke with Mr. Randy Cluat, who's a councilman in that area, and he had a prior commitment to tonight. This wasn't scheduled, so he wouldn't be able to be here tonight. But I went out today to visit with Wesley, and also called Joe. Joe had called me earlier, and spoke with him about the different problems and the different solutions. In a sense, we have a problem here that has no absolute solution. And you have an industrial fabrication shop in the middle of a neighborhood and right up against the neighborhood. Neither of which, during that time that they were both there, zoning was not in place. That's the reason why we do have zoning today, to avoid these type of situations. But they were both here. They both have a right to be there. Mr. Babin has a right to operate his business. He employs 61 people for the parish. It's a good, viable business for this parish. However, not to the extent that the residences don't have a quality of life. That's why we passed the noise ordinance. I was out there today, and the noise is considerable. By all acceptable standards, the noise is considerable. I do think that there are some things that can be done. Mr. Wesley talked about them today and implementing some things, and he's looking for a temporary variance so that he can get a large production schedule in right now until the end of March. I have no objections to that, as long as he would be doing some things that would be making the long-term of this better for the neighbors, because I think it's unacceptable if we're not. And I do think that within any business's budget, you have to budget something in there for cooperation with your neighbors. I don't think that it is sufficient, and this is just my personal opinion, that is sufficient at this point in time. I also don't think that Wesley, to be honest with you, putting up a metal fence is going to serve any purpose to stop noise. I would like to see some type of research done into what type of fence would best reduce the amount of noise. And we were discussing today about, instead of, you know, because the air compressor is one of the biggest problems that they have. And if we could, Wesley is looking into trying to find out from the manufacturer what type of enclosure would be adequate for the air compressor that would really cut down on the amount of noise, but would still allow it to operate and not overheat, because he does have some operations there. So I think that would be one of the things which he said that he would add to this schedule. And the other thing that one of the suggestions I had would be to implement a certain amount of insulation to the metal, because right now it's like a big bass drum. You have 3 sides enclosed and 1 side open, and all the noise is magnified and it comes out that area, and it's very loud. And so I think if you have some soundproofing, some deadening within the building, it will considerably cut down on the amount of noise that comes out there. And then some landscaping within that, I think, would be very appropriate. Mr. Fairchild, they said they wouldn't be able to do any fencing until the drainage work was done. Is there a schedule? Do you know?
No, I'm not aware of any drainage.
Oh, okay. All right, that's right. That's Alan. And them. So they're on schedule for some drainage. Wesley, did they say?
About 3 to 4 weeks before they get there to do that.
Okay. Can you check on that, Ronnie, just to get on the same page? We're looking at 3 to 4 weeks for the drainage project to be finished, because we have some drainage issues in there. And Mr. Babin has graciously allowed the parish to use his property exclusively to, if necessary, to help the drainage of the neighbors in the area. So we appreciate that. Any comments, Mr.
Ms. Lindsay, is there anything that we could do to mandate them to put noise barrier fence all the way around the property?
If you're, you could put that stipulation on the variance, certainly. You could grant the variance subject to certain conditions, and that could be one of them, yes.
Okay, I think that it should be noise barrier all around the premises, and it should be, I think some engineers should design it to make sure that they could give some of these residents some relief, other than just putting it on a couple of sides and causing problems for somebody else.
Mr. President, is there, do we have, and I don't know, Ricky, do we have some expertise to consult of ways that would assist him to, for barriers and things to as a business?
When you build a highway, Federal Highway Administration, if you're going to affect people's quality of life as far as the noise, they have certain standards there. The walls that you see along the highway are mandated by the federal government when you do receive federal money to build on these interstates. If you're going to add any kind of lanes, you have to. So I would think there's specs there to look at. I don't know if they would fall in the same category, but I think they probably know.
Well, I don't think he's going to receive too much federal monies on this, so
no. But what I'm saying is, bottom line, there are specs there at DOTD and possibly other places that we can look into.
Councilman Bell, you.
Councilman Thompson, that's what I want.
And I think you have a barrier implementation schedule, which you know, for the people that benefits, and to go back, if we grant this variance, which lasts to the end of March, we have no problem, but I think it ought to be some stipulation that he's working on a more permanent thing, because it's really, even though it's a good viable business, it's really unacceptable amount of noise on a daily basis. And he's willing to do some things. I really do appreciate your cooperation, Mr. Wesley. I think it's you're trying to be a good neighbor, and so if we can get some other things in here, I think that would go a long ways into implement that. He's willing to put a fence, and we ask that you take a look and consult with someone for noise, as a fence also acts as a noise barrier, not just a metal fence. And then the enclosure around the air compressor, and then give us a schedule for if you want to do some budgeting for insulating in the building, or some type of muffling from the sounds in the building. And what I would like to entertain is at the end of March, which would give you some time to do that when the variance is over, if you could report back to us is the problems and the schedule that we would have a more permanent schedule. And that way, because I do think that this is gonna, there's no question this is gonna happen more than once. And we would be willing, I think, to continue granting variances if the noise reduction on a daily basis is reduced continuously, if we see some progress there.
I can't support a variance unless we get something in writing saying that he's planning to put a wall around the whole premises.
Okay.
And I'm not going to support a variance unless it's a commitment or a letter saying that he's planning on putting a wall to help relieve the noise in the area.
Where there is a wall around most of the area already. He's talking about putting one in the open area, Wesley, and that open area, is that the one that you're talking about doing? So that would pretty much enclose the area. That the rest of that open area would be enclosed, right?
If I continue it on along Dora Road
Yes.
to our property marker, and that would fully enclose the entire property aside from the gates.
I think that would be appropriate for that. So you would commit to that, and I understand the schedule cannot be started until after the drainage project, and therefore I would like to put this back on the agenda for next month, and we get an update in the progress, and maybe for the next 2 months, so that we can, by that time it will give you an opportunity to get an implementation plan, and we can get some follow-up and see if we're actually making progress. Yes, sir, Mr.
Lindy, correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I still think you have to call a public hearing and everything before you can grant the variance. Is that correct? Would you
Yes.
explain
Yes.
to?
Yes.
So
we're
what
trying
kind of
to set
time
some-
frame are we looking at between now publishing the public hearing and actually going back to council to grant the request? Could you answer that, Ms. Amanda?
It's been advertised notice for public hearing set for the next council meeting.
Right.
So if you all move it forward with whatever conditions you'd like to bring up at the council meeting, that'd be sufficient, but it has been noticed
Right.
for public hearing at the next meeting, so.
And that's what I'd like to put in there, that the conditions would be that what he has here would also include a fence around the remaining areas around Dora, which he has agreed to, a plan for enclosure around the air compressor, and a plan for progress on insulating the building. Obviously, he has a large building. He can't go and just insulate the whole thing in one swoop. That would be unfair. But if he would have a progressive schedule that would assist in that, I think that would be amenable to everyone. Any other stipulations any councilman would like to put in? With those stipulations, Do I hear a recommendation on this temporary noise variance?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Bell to grant the temporary noise variance with the conditions listed that we had, and also on those conditions would be at least two follow-up meetings, the next two strategic planning meetings to see the progress. Do I hear a second? We have no second. So we're not going to be able to move forward with that variance until we get, unless we would have that. So the variance is denied, and so we're not even going to move. We'll move forward. Oh, yes, we will. We will go to public hearing, but we will not get a recommendation. We'll get a lack of a second from the strategic planning when we go to public hearing, but it will be referred to the council, but it's not going to be with a favorable from the strategic planning committee. That's where we're. You got that, Cinnamon? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, number 6, public hearing to discuss revisions to the Ascension Parish zoning map. Mr. Ricky Compton.
Good evening. What I've done is I've created my maps so that I can sit here and pan around the maps if we want to discuss any particular areas. But I've created an outline that I can run through real quick and talk about the revisions that we've made on the map. I want to start with the goals of our zoning map revisions. When we started this process, we had 2 goals in mind, and we've ended up with 4 now. The first one is we've cleaned it up to significantly reduce the number of parcels that have multiple zoning designations. We've had several issues lately where properties have zoning lines that cross them, and then we have to implement our 51% rule to determine what the correct zoning is. And so we've gone through and we've significantly reduced the number of those. We've left the parcels that had a commercial frontage. We didn't think it was fair to eliminate the viability of those parcels, so they still have a commercial frontage with whatever the zoning was behind them. The second goal was to address some sites within the parish that were non-conforming uses that had a zoning designation that didn't match with what the current land use was. And so we've gone in and updated some of those parcels to get them in line, and so now they'll be conforming uses. The third goal was to introduce our new MU2 zoning designation into parts of the parish where they make sense, and I'll show you those on the map. And then the last goal was it's an attempt to get our zoning map more in line with our transportation network. If you look at the current zoning map, and I'm going to zoom in here, along Highway 42 and Highway 44 specifically, you can see what looks like just a broad brush. They painted from the center line of 42 and 44 out a distance, I believe it was 660 feet. Regardless of what the parcel lines were doing, they just said this is all Crossroads commercial, and just by its name alone, the map that they drew doesn't make sense. Crossroads commercial should be shown at Crossroads. It's our second most intense zoning category, and I just think that as we've moved forward through time since 1998, we've learned a lot of lessons, and one of those lessons, in my opinion, should be Crossroads commercial shouldn't strip out 42 and 44. So I'm going to go to my next map, which is our overall new map, and I'm going to start in the north part of the parish and work my way south. The airline highway corridor we've cleaned up. The pink is what you're seeing along 61. Used to just be the same broad brush. It was a distance from the center line of airline. And what we've done is we've gone in and we've indicated the parcels that front on airline highway, given them that MU designation, the entire length of airline highway. So as you work your way south, you'll see that the MU designation is specific to parcels that front on airline. Parcels that were clipped with that MU designation that if they met the 51% rule, but they didn't front on Airline Highway, we've given the mixed use 2 designation. So you'll see those maroon parcels pop up in certain spots, and that's the reason for those. We didn't want to eliminate their commercial viability. The parcels that backed up to the mixed-use parcels on Airline Highway but fronted on 73 started trickling into my office to be rezoned. And what we did is we asked them, we came to the council, that was approved a couple of weeks ago. So our zoning map has been changed to reflect mixed-use 2 fronting on 73 but backing up to Airline Highway. As you start looking at 42, as you work your way east, what we've done is we've taken those parcels that aren't at crossroads, that didn't get some sort of rezoning in the past. There's some parcels through, just through time, they came through and they requested to be a specific zoning category. We didn't change those. But we did look at the rest of that corridor and said, these parcels along 42 should be mixed use 2. They should be small residential scale office commercial uses. When you get here at 929 and 42, we made that crossroads commercial because that's a crossroads of 2 pretty significant roadways. As you get to 44 and 42, we left the crossroads commercial and put mixed use 2 on the other side where it backs up to residential, where we don't think you should have strip centers or apartment buildings. Continuing down 42, where Joe Severio hits, we made that a little crossroads commercial. And once again, moving down again, I apologize, I guess it's 933, where 933 hits 42, we made another crossroads commercial. And the other thing we did up here is the old map, the RM designation, which is residential medium, stopped somewhere in this area, which did make a lot of sense when there was a small lot residential development less than a half a mile right down the road. So what we did is we just extended that RM to encompass those lots, which got a couple of parcels through here, a new designation. They changed from conservation to RM. But now we have a logical reason to stop it. It's where small lots have already been developed. As we head south, down 44, we did the same analysis. If you're not at a crossroads, you should not be crossroads commercial. You should be mixed use 2, small residential scale office and commercial. But where you are at a crossroads, we looked at the parcels and we left you as crossroads commercial. So heading down 44, there's a whole different character to what that broad brush stripe from the center line of 44 used to be. Heading over to 431, we analyzed each intersection, which in the before condition was just a box. They basically took a box from each corner and drew it a certain distance regardless of what the parcel lines looked like. So what we did is we went in and we looked at all of those parcels and we cleaned them up. So now crossroads commercial happens within a certain distance of that crossroads, and we no longer have any parcels that are cut or split with conservation or rural or RM and crossroads. Heading down 73, there used to be a big rectangle here where they basically just said, well, 660 feet on either side of 73 and through the whole interstate, that should all be mixed use. Well, we looked at where the road networks were at 621, at 73, and we cleaned that up. So basically the mixed use now are on the parcels right there at the interchange and where they can be supported. Heading south, we added a little crossroads commercial at Corner View in 73. We felt like there's a demand there for some commercial. Down here at 30, this is an industrial park, and there were several parcels that were wedged in here that were still business park, which is this light green that surrounds it. We just didn't think it was fair that when this parcel got rezoned that there'd be several parcels left here in the middle that were going to be held to a different standard. So we just changed those to industrial and think that it's really just a cleaner way to handle those parcels through there. As we head down to the Mississippi, we saw a case just here recently where there were batcher lands between the road and the river that were zoned conservation, and that conservation wouldn't allow the use that's the only use that could occur there, the mooring of barges and whatnot. So we changed the entire map to reflect that the batcher lands is a transitional zoning. We also just heard at the last council meeting a rezone for this parcel right here, the Hard Times Plantation, where there were 2 parcels between them that still had the conservation designation. So we said that doesn't make sense. So we cleaned that up. And in that process, we realized that there was a wedge here that based on the old line, this industrial, there was a stripe of land that was transition, and then it came down, and then we were going to grab this guy. We said, why don't we just make that all transition so we don't have a conservation category that's wedged in here. So we took the property lines as they are, made them transitional, and now our conservation line has a clean edge. The other thing that we've just talked about tonight is the fact that we need to go in and make a commercial category right here at the front of Pelican Point. We know there's a strip center there. We should make it conforming, and that's just one that we missed in the process. And as we move down 70, this industrial tract never had a transition buffer to it. We're going to give that buffer to it, and we cleaned up the business park lines to match the property lines. And then moving over to the West Bank, we made some interesting changes. We basically cleaned up the mixed use in this area and in this area. We put the bachelor lands as transition where they needed to be. But over here on the west side of Donaldsonville, I thought that there was a lacking of space to develop industrial or warehouse or business park type uses. So what we did is we took this entire corner where 1 and 943 come together, and we looked at the properties and we said, what if that was all business park? If we just rezone that and created an opportunity for developers to come in and create a little place for jobs, a little place for businesses on the west side, and nobody has to worry about rezoning, we did it in a spot that makes sense. And then the other thing we did on this side of the river is in the before plan, there were a lot of other colors over here where you see all this green. There was some rural and some other stuff mixed in here. And what we did is we just called that all conservation. We don't think the road network is there to support a whole lot today. But on the flip side of that coin, what we've done, and you'll see it in 3 specific areas, on the west bank and on the west side of Donaldsonville, or the north side of Donaldsonville, on the south side of Donaldsonville, also on the west bank, on this little point, and this area right through the middle, which Riverton sits right here, Pelican Point's over here, this is the airport, we've drawn this thick line. And what we're calling that line is our Spud PUD T&D overlay area. And our thought is that we don't want to restrict development for the mom and pop. We don't want to eliminate family partitions or simple divisions up to the 9 lots that we allow today. But what we're saying is, if you want to develop in these areas, we want you to develop to a higher standard so that we get a PUD or a SPUD or a T&D that's going to improve the transportation networks, that's going to provide parks and possibly school sites if they're needed. And we think that doing these overlays is more of an incentive because right now with conservation, they're limited to the number of lots and the size of lots. But by putting the overlay on there, we're basically saying, look, if you come in this area, we will support a PUD, a SPUD, or a T&D because we know we're going to get a higher standard of development. I guess that's it for now, unless we have some questions.
Yes, President Martinez.
Okay, Ricky. I'm
Yes, sir.
looking at this all looks good, but basically what I'd like to do is to have public hearing in each council district to go over these changes, because you're going to have people that own land there that's not going to know what's going on. And, I would rather inform the public on all this, give them every opportunity to look at it before we make the decision. I think it's a great map, but I just really want some input from the public on this, because if not, there'll be a backlash, I assure you. But again, I think if people understand it, look at it, know what the zones mean, I think it'll all turn out to be a positive thing.
Yes, Councilman Bell.
Ricky, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with President Martinez. I think we need to do something in each district for the people. I'd also like to really, really congratulate you on your efforts, and what a fantastic overlay we've got here. We've never seen anything like this. Very good, and please convey my thanks to the GIS department for coming up with this fantastic map. Very good job. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilman Thompson.
Yes, I also agree with President Martinez, and Ricky, whenever you decide to have these public hearings, appreciate if you would let me know where I could try to be in my area, my district, doing, when you're having these public hearings. I work shift work, so it's a little bit different than everybody else.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and Ricky, again, I echo that. We probably everyone, as you look at that, will probably have a couple of questions and comments and everything, and we can put that down. Want to remind everyone that this is a work in progress, and that this is, you really don't get any input until you put something out there.
Right.
Found that. And so the first draft is out there for people to take a look at, and now it's time for some public input, see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and see what we need to do to make things right. But also, I'm just really excited about all the time and effort that has been put into this, and I think as people see the benefits of this, and again, you know, just continue to move forward. We really do appreciate the efforts that you've given.
At our next zoning commission meeting, we're going to do the exact same thing we did tonight, basically present it, and, you know, hopes that maybe some public comes, and within the next 30 to 60 days, I would see us out and about within each of the districts, and just getting the map out there, because like you said, I've given it to all the commissioners, all the council, so if anybody has any questions, I welcome to come by my office, and we'll start those discussions early.
Okay.
I offer motion that we present this to the rest of the council at the next council meeting.
Okay.
I'll second that.
And motion by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilman Bell, to present this, Mr. Rickey, at the next parish council meeting, as well as planning and zoning, and then start the public hearing process. No opposition. Motion is passed. Cinnamon, please put that on the next agenda.
And thanks again for the fine job you did, Ricky.
It really is. Really is a step in the right direction. Okay, number 7, update on Parish Court. Lindsay.
Well, gentlemen, what you have before you is a draft ordinance. It's a lot to digest, but I would just suggest that maybe you take a few minutes, maybe before our next meeting, look over it, and then there are a lot of items that we need to discuss. I drew this ordinance based on the St. Tammany Parish Code Enforcement Court.
Any other obstacles other than the ordinance itself?
No, none whatsoever.
Okay. Okay, we have our homework to do. Read this information. Lindsay, can you get this out to the rest of the council
I'd be happy to.
for so they can look over it, and any input we have from anyone, please do so. And at the next, we'd like to try to vote on this at the next strategic planning meeting. So we'll have a date that we can move forward finally. Want to let everybody know that a lot of these ordinances that we wish to pass, implementing things, one of them is junk car ordinance, and a few others, is based on passing the parish court so that we can enforce these ordinances. This is our method of enforcement.
We in Ascension is in badly need of this junk car ordinance. I think we have it already on the books, right? It's worked up?
Well, yes, it's pretty much worked up, but we're waiting on a method of enforcement. And so this is our method of enforcement. So that's why we need to try to move forward on this. So please ask the rest of the councilmen to read this information so that we can actually move forward and have a decision at the next strategic planning meeting.
Thank you, Lindsay.
With that, we'll put it on the next, Cinnamon, put that on the next agenda and try to get it out to everyone. And thank you for all our hard work, Lindsay. Okay, number 8. Ordinance to provide the Ascension Parish Governing Authority with a system of reimbursement. Okay, what that is, and we've gone over it, and we had it the last time where we had a combination of the administrative and council reimbursements. And Lindsay, can you explain the need for this? What had happened?
Certainly. The Ascension Parish Charter requires, or the Ascension Parish Charter allows council members to be reimbursed for travel and meals, etc., but they require that this be done in accordance with an ordinance. No ordinance is currently in place. Council have been reimbursed pursuant to a resolution, so this is just a cleanup, and we want to get an ordinance on the book so that you all can be reimbursed for meals and travel that is related to your work here on the council.
And so basically what we're doing, it's just a clear cleanup method. We've been agreed to be reimbursed by resolution in the past, and we saw that that is not exactly how it was expected to be done by the charter. This is the way it was supposed to be done, so we're just implementing what we already have on the books.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by
Move to
Councilman
the full
Thompson
council.
to move this to the full council, second by Councilman Bell. Any objections? That being passed, and it will, Cinnamon, put that on the next council agenda. Okay, number 9, ordinance to amend Chapter 5, Article 3 of the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinance to prohibit animal sales in certain areas. This is something that we've had for the last 2 council meeting, strategic planning meeting, and basically you can take a look at the ordinance and the purpose.
I'd like to offer a motion to move that to the next council meeting, full council meeting also.
Motion by Councilman Thompson,
I'll second it.
second by Councilman Bell. Any discussions?
Chairman, may,
Yes.
may I interrupt for just one moment? When you all last heard this item, committee member Valentine asked me to research the legality of prohibiting these sales on private property, like flea markets and
Right.
playgrounds.
Right.
I did do that research, and as long as it falls under that umbrella of health, safety, and welfare, that is within your authority to prohibit those sales.
All right.
So the ordinance you have before you does not include the playgrounds, the flea markets, etc. So if you want to send this to the full council and you do want to prohibit those sales at flea markets and playgrounds, just place that in your motion.
Well,
That was the whole point in
Right.
really doing this.
Right.
Is to follow Baton Rouge and Livingston, which instituted these measures. And what's happening is we're having people that are coming from out of state and out of parish that's selling animals over here, and they're not being addressed for as no safety measures whatsoever. And the biggest concern of the animal control people is that it's impulse buying. People pass by, they see a cute little animal and they buy it, and no one can track down the people. There's no method of tracking them down. You don't know where they live. They're out of state, they're out of parish, and you cannot come back at them if the animal's sick.
To include.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a substitute motion to include playgrounds and flea markets.
Okay, we have a substitute motion to include flea markets and playgrounds.
Second.
Second by Mr. Thompson. Any further discussion? Any objection?
Motion to move to the full council with changes.
And Mr. Thompson has also made a motion to move that
I'll
to full
second that.
council with the changes. Mr. Bell seconds it. No objection. That motion passed. Cinnamon, please put that on the council agenda with the changes. Okay. And number 10, 2009-2011 Louisiana Emergency Shelter Grant Program. Martha Collins. Thank you,
Mr.
Martha.
Chairman, members of the committee. This is a grant that we have each year that comes through the Office of Community Development. This is the 2009-2011. It is open now for submitting to the general public. We're asking you to forward that to the council so that we can advertise for applicants for this grant, and then we will have the President Martinez authorized at the same time to execute all documents and move forward.
Martha, for the benefit of, what does emergency shelter grant? What does it do?
Okay, it's for such as Quad or Church United or agencies who provide emergency shelters for homeless and a temporary basis until they can move forward into the workforce. We've had this program as long as I've been here, in 2005 in the grants, and it's strictly a pass-through. It's a federal grant that goes through the state. The state awards us the funds, and then we have subcontracts, which we just authorized a subcontract for 2 agencies to utilize the funding.
And it's been very good for the parish, and people have taken opportunities to
It helps
benefit.
those that are in need at the time for a temporary basis.
Do I hear a motion to move this forward?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bell, second by Mr. Thompson to move forward with approval of this to the full council. Any objections? No further objections. Motion granted. Cinnamon, put that on the council agenda with our approval. And number 11,
Thank you very much.
resolution to appoint the consulting firm of Roberto Macedo and Associates to administer the parish's disaster housing assistance program, Ike Gustav, and DHAP Ike Gustav, Arthur Collins.
All right, Mr. Chairman, this is a resolution that we have to appoint Roberto Mercedes and Associates to administer this. Currently, he has a contract with the parish doing Katrina. The Ike and Gustav funds came down, and this is basically a cleanup to allow him to move forward.
Second.
And then,
Motion by Mr. Bell, second by Mr. Thompson. How much, Martha, how much money is involved in it?
right now, we're just, this contract is up until April the 15th, and in the resolution that you have, we are going to we need authorization to go out for RFQ or proposals for the administration of the Section 8 and the Housing Rental Assistance Program. Mr. Roberto is here if you'd like to ask any questions of him on the program. Gentlemen?
He's the only one in the area that's been doing that.
Yeah, I mean,
He's been with the parish, but due to the new changes in our process, contracts need to be bid out so that we will, that also entails this. So we have to go out for bids on the contract.
Okay.
And his contract ends April 15th, so we have to go ahead and start the process of going through procurement.
Right.
So we've been continuing on with the program and also going for procurement of the, for the new
How much grants we've gotten on this?
I'm
How much of
sorry?
a grant have we gotten?
How
Grant
much of the
monies.
money? So we got, Roberto, you want to come up and talk about this?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr.
Welcome.
Roberto Mercedes.
For the specific project for Gustav, the federal government has calculated that perhaps up to 250 families were displaced by Gustav. So they provided near about $800,000 to the parish to assist these families from the beginning of the year through March of 2010.
Okay.
From the responses that we've received, and I have a book full of very thick contact manual for persons that have applied. But as you know, rental properties are scarce, so right now we only have 60 families. But they're coming a little bit slower than at the beginning of the year. So I don't foresee having 250 in the program, but it will be over 100 families that are going to be assisted.
All right. Now, Roberto, do you also assist these people when they are unable to stay in their homes because of damage with help in trying to get their houses fixed, or where do they go and things of that sort, consulting?
Well, when
is that part of it?
Yeah, when the hurricane took place, a lot of the families couldn't stay in the same, whether they were their homes or rental properties. So FEMA provided temporary assistance during the months of September, October, and November, and then they transferred it to the parish in different areas. No, this grant does not include funds to make repairs at the home. This is strictly to provide rental assistance on a temporary basis.
Okay. All right. So we appreciate that and your help. And where would the people go to see about signing up?
The federal government has already established
Okay.
the information service in the Coma office in Baton Rouge, and we process them from there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a motion on that?
Motion. I already made the motion.
We have a motion, Mr. Bell, second by Mr. Thompson, to move this by resolution to the full council. Any objections? So pass. Cinnamon, put that on the next agenda.
Thank you.
With that, we come to number 14.
Motion adjourned.
We are now adjourned.